They found her in a valley locals called Death Valley, not because of crime, but because hikers sometimes got lost there and never came back. On a cold November afternoon in 1970, two young girls walking through the Isdal Valley near Bergen, Norway, noticed something strange ahead on the rocky slope. At first, it looked like a pile of discarded clothing. Then they saw the body. A woman lay on her back among charred stones, partially burned. Around her were melted plastic containers, a bottle, fragments of clothing, and something else. An unmistakable smell of gasoline. But the strangest detail wasn't the fire. Every label on her clothing had been cut out. Her fingerprints had been deliberately obscured. And when police searched her belongings, they discovered multiple passports, false identities, coded notes, and a trail across Europe that led nowhere. No one knew who she was. No one claimed her. And more than half a century later, no one still does. This is a story from the shadows of real history. A mystery preserved not in rumor, but in police files, witness statements, and unanswered questions. If you're drawn to true crime that lingers long after the story ends, you're in the right place. In 1970, Norway was considered one of the safest countries in the world. Quiet, orderly, and prosperous, it was a place where violent crime was rare enough to make national headlines. Bergen, the country's second-largest city, sat between mountains and sea. Picturesque, calm, almost insulated from the chaos of the wider world. But the Cold War was at its height. Across Europe, intelligence agencies operated in silence. Diplomats, defectors, smugglers, and spies moved through train stations and hotels, leaving faint traces that only history would later recognize. Into this environment arrived a woman who seemed to belong nowhere. She checked into hotels across Norway under different names, always well-dressed, always composed, always alone. Staff remembered her as elegant, reserved, and fluent in several languages. She spoke German confidently, French with ease, and some English, but her accent didn't quite place her. She paid in cash, she avoided conversation, and she carried more luggage than most solo travelers. At one hotel, she wrote her name as Fenia. At another, she used Elizabeth. At yet another, something entirely different. When staff asked about her nationality, she gave vague answers. Belgian, sometimes Swiss, sometimes simply European. She never stayed long. She would arrive, unpack carefully, reorganize her belongings, sometimes burn scraps of paper in the room's ashtray, and then disappear to the next city. It wasn't until after her death that investigators realized how methodical her movements had been. A deliberate pattern of travel designed to avoid leaving a consistent identity behind. On November 29, 1970, the hiker's discovery triggered an immediate police response. The scene was deeply unsettling. The woman's body was badly burned from the waist up, yet parts of her clothing remained intact. Nearby lay melted plastic containers that smelled strongly of gasoline. Empty sleeping pill packets were scattered among the rocks. An umbrella lay beside her, oddly untouched by the flames. The position of the body suggested she had been lying down when the fire began. Her hands were clenched tightly, her fingers curled inward. At first glance, investigators considered suicide, but almost immediately, inconsistencies emerged. There was no obvious container used to pour gasoline on herself. Her posture didn't match typical self-immolation cases. And most disturbing of all, the labels on every piece of clothing had been cut out with precision. Someone had taken great care to remove anything that could identify her. The autopsy revealed even more troubling details. Inside her stomach were large quantities of sleeping pills, far more than a normal dose. Combined with alcohol found in her system, the sedatives would have rendered her heavily impaired, possibly unconscious. Her lungs contained soot, indicating she had been alive when the fire started. Her jaw showed signs of bruising, suggesting a recent blow or fall. And then there was something else. The pathologist noted that her teeth had extensive dental work, including gold crowns. Expensive procedures not common in Norway at the time. This suggested she came from somewhere else, somewhere with access to advanced dental care. Yet no missing person report matched her description. With no identification at the scene, police turned to the only clue available: her belongings. A few days later, 2 suitcases were discovered at the Bergen railway station, stored in a locker. Inside were items that transformed the case from a puzzling death into something far stranger. Wigs, multiple pairs of sunglasses, clothing with all labels removed, cosmetics from various European brands, a notebook filled with cryptic codes, and foreign currency from several countries. There were no personal photographs, no letters, no documents bearing a real name. The coded notebook became a focal point. After careful analysis, investigators realized it wasn't random. It was a travel log. Each code corresponded to a location and date. When decoded, it revealed that the woman had traveled extensively across Europe in the months before her death. Norway, Denmark, Germany, Switzerland, France. But every hotel stay had been under a different alias. Staff who remembered her described peculiar behavior. She often requested rooms facing away from the street. She would move furniture slightly, as if arranging the space for a specific purpose. Some reported that she listened to radio broadcasts late into the night. One witness recalled seeing her meet with a man at a hotel. A brief conversation conducted in hushed tones. The man was never identified. Another reported that she appeared frightened during one stay, speaking urgently on the phone in a language the staff couldn't understand. Then came a critical discovery. Forensic analysis of her handwriting suggested she was likely educated, possibly from Central Europe. Linguistic experts believed her accent might be German or Austrian, but not definitively. Her fingerprints were circulated internationally. No match. Interpol was contacted. Nothing. No government claimed her as a missing citizen. And despite the distinctive dental work, dentists across Europe could not identify her. As weeks passed with no identification, speculation grew. One theory suggested she was a spy. The Cold War context made this plausible. Norway hosted sensitive military installations, including missile testing sites along the coast. Foreign intelligence services had strong interest in monitoring these facilities. Witnesses reported that the woman had been seen near restricted areas during her travels. Some accounts, though not conclusively verified, suggested she used binoculars or took notes while overlooking military zones. Her use of wigs and aliases, the removal of labels, the coded notebook, all consistent with clandestine tradecraft. But there were problems with this theory. Professional intelligence agents typically have support networks, extraction plans, and secure communication methods. If she were a spy, why had no government intervened after her death? Why abandon such a valuable operative? Another theory suggested she was involved in smuggling, possibly diamonds or currency. Her constant movement and use of cash could fit this profile. Others believed she might have been fleeing something: a criminal past, political persecution, or a personal threat. And then there was the possibility of murder. Could someone have drugged her, brought her to the valley, and staged the scene to resemble suicide? Some investigators noted the difficulty of reaching the exact location where her body was found. It required navigating steep terrain. Carrying an unconscious adult there would have been challenging, but not impossible. Witnesses later reported seeing a woman matching her description walking toward the valley days earlier, accompanied by two men dressed in dark clothing. This account surfaced years later and was never fully verified, but it added another layer of unease. Despite extensive investigation, the fundamental question remained unanswered. Who was she? The Norwegian police eventually buried her under the name Unknown Woman. The funeral was quiet, attended mainly by officials. For decades the case faded into obscurity. Then, years later, renewed interest led to forensic re-examinations. Advances in DNA technology offered hope that her identity might finally be uncovered. Hair samples and teeth were analyzed. Isotope testing suggested she may have grown up in Central or Eastern Europe, possibly moving during childhood. This aligned with earlier linguistic theories, but still did not point to a specific person. New facial reconstructions were released to the public. Tips came in from across Europe. None conclusive. One of the most haunting details emerged from modern analysis. The sleeping pills found in her system were of a type that could be obtained legally at the time, but not easily in large quantities. This suggested planning, whether by her or by someone else, and the coded notebook, once thought to be a simple travel log, remains ambiguous. Some researchers believe it could conceal additional meanings, still not fully deciphered. Perhaps the most troubling aspect is the absence of anyone searching for her. No family stepped forward, no missing persons case fit. It was as if she had been erased before she died. Today, hikers still pass through Isdal Valley. It remains beautiful. Steep slopes, quiet forests, the kind of place where sound carries strangely, and time feels suspended. Some locals still call it Death Valley, not because of accidents, but because of her. A woman who moved across Europe without leaving a trace. A traveler with no home country. A person who seemed to exist only in transit. Hotel rooms, train stations, anonymous corridors. Was she a spy caught in a silent war? A criminal on the run? A victim of betrayal? Or simply someone who chose to disappear until something went terribly wrong? We may never know. Her grave in Bergen bears no real name, only a marker acknowledging that she was once alive, once known to someone, somewhere. And perhaps that is the most unsettling truth of all. A person can walk through the world, speak with strangers, sleep in hotels, leave fingerprints on glasses and door handles, and still vanish so completely that history cannot put them back together. More than 50 years later, the Isdal woman remains a mystery. Not just how she died, but who she ever was. And until that question is answered, her story is not over. If this case stayed with you, you're not alone. Some mysteries resist time, refusing to fade no matter how many years pass. If you want to hear more true stories that still echo in the present, you can follow for future episodes. And share your thoughts on what you believe happened to the woman in the valley. Because somewhere, The truth still exists.